What if your CRM could automatically fill in missing pieces of data? Today, we're going to unlock HubSpot Smart Properties feature in the new and improved Data Hub. I'll be giving you 5 real use case examples that you can implement today, and let's knock on wood and hope that these make your life as a HubSpot admin just a little bit easier. Before we just dive into creating new properties, let's first talk about what are smart properties. So these are new properties that are either contact or company based that have the ability to be enriched via AI, and that will include doing data research prompts and pulling from public web info or actually using your existing CRM data. So instead of having to fill in these properties, you can automate this research and basically save you both time and also increase your accuracy and consistency of using these fields across the CRM. So what type of properties can we create? Well, it's going to be most of our standard types of properties. This can be single or multiple line text. It could be a number, a checkbox, multiple checkboxes, radio select, drop down select. Any of those choices will work here. So it does require us to, of course, type in some sort of prompt. So you can leverage other areas within HubSpot or AI and recommendations as far as tailoring your prompt if you do need things to get really specific. We are going to go over just some general use cases today, but do continue to leverage AI to refine those prompts further if you need it for very unique and specific instances for your business. Now, once you've created these properties, we can choose to just like enrich one record at a time individually. We can always do these in bulk as well using just the regular index view, or we can use it in workflows as well. So in order to use these smart properties, it does require use of the HubSpot credits. So we have other videos all about credits, and those are constantly changing. So be sure to stay up to date with the latest version and latest videos that we've put out that are talking all about using HubSpot credits. But because these do cost credits, we do want to be really mindful about the number of properties that we're creating as smart properties, or even just how much we are using automation to truly enrich our records. So don't just create them because you can. Make sure we are having a true purpose behind it, and this is data that we can use to actually move the needle and improve our CRM. Let's go ahead and dive right into creating some of these properties. So again, I've got 5 examples that we're going to run through. So we are going to go ahead and navigate into our settings, come down into data management properties, and create properties just like we would do any other time. So the only difference is that we are obviously going to be creating some prompts. So I already have prompts prepared specifically for this use case in this video. But when you're doing these, I would recommend kind of making some notes or keeping a spreadsheet of your ideas before actually implementing it, because you do have to work backwards when creating these properties to actually outline the different options. If you are going to have drop down or multiple select, you have to enter all those fields before you actually put in the prompt. Or at least put in something to like fill in the space, and then you kind of go back and forth. I can testify to that because I was doing that previously to recording this video. I was making sure I had all my examples lined up so we can make this nice and speedy for you. So this first example is going to be a bit of like lead qualification and ICP matching for companies. So let's say that we maybe sell a product or service, but it's really based on whether or not someone has a physical office location, so not being like a fully remote company. And maybe it's even better if they have multiple locations, right? So that's what we're going to base this first prompt off of. And we're just going to simply do a nice, easy return of yes or no. So we're going to go ahead and change this to be drop down select. And we're just going to put in our options, yes or no. Actually come back and switch this to company. I missed that part. So we're going to come back to our field options and go ahead and type in our prompt here. So I'm just going to copy and paste this from my examples that I've already prepared for us. So we are going to want to make sure we select the right option here. So we can do web research if this is something that we just want to search the entire internet for, or maybe specifically we only want to look at a company's website and determine that information. We also have option for our property data, so things that we may have already stored one way or another as another property, but we need to do something else to make an analysis with that, or if we're using our call transcripts. So in this case, this is just going to be some general web or company research. Either one of these I think would be fine in this example. So again, we're just going to determine whether a company has multiple physical office locations. It's simply going to state yes or no. And then we're going to go ahead and select a couple options here just to go ahead and test and make sure that that information looks right. So we're going to use a simple strat and we're going to use HubSpot as our examples here. So these are very different experiences. So I should see those previews coming out exactly because I already know exactly how many offices Simple Strat has, and that is 0. We are a fully remote team, so we don't have any physical office locations, and we definitely don't have multiple. So that would be correct, and the AI powering that as no. And then HubSpot, we do know, of course, has multiple office locations globally, so we would expect that return here to be yes. So in this case, it looks like we don't need to really refine our prompt at all. Looks like we've nailed it on the first try. So let's just go ahead and go back and name our property here, and we'll just put multiple office locations. Would help if I could spell it right. There we go. Oh, I already saved it. So I'll just go ahead and put a number 2 here in that case. All right, so once we have gotten that established, we are good to go. We can go ahead and create that first property and first example. So start off with something super basic and easy. We're going to get a little bit more difficult as we go through each example. So for number 2, we are going to look into company data and trying to enrich based on maybe if you guys are looking for competitors or people that are using your competitors, I should say. So let's go ahead and create a new property here. And again, we're going to switch this over to company because this is going to continue to be company research for this one. And then we are going to do a multiple select in this case. And we're going to be basically searching for companies that might be using certain types of technologies or platforms based on ones that we specialize in. It's with Simple Strat, which would be HubSpot, but then we also might want to consider people that are using the number 1 competitor here for Salesforce, or maybe they're using WordPress or Shopify, since those typically tend to be the type of technologies people come to Simple Strat using, trying to either replace or integrate with or something like that. So this would be really great for us to be able to incorporate and use when qualifying leads, doing lead scoring, and knowing whether or not they already use one of these existing platforms. So we're going to go ahead and save that and then jump down to our prompt. And then I'm just going to copy and paste this option in. So again, we are going to just use web research in this example. We are going to select any technologies or platforms that this company uses based on, again, our list of options. So you could list yourself plus your competitors to see which ones they are surfacing and using. Listing yourself will help just to try to refine whether or not you can see that information or if that information would be available and searchable on the web as well. So again, let's go ahead and grab a couple of examples here. We're going to, of course, use Simple Strat once again. And then let's go ahead and use another company that I know typically would integrate or use these types of platforms in their website or anything that they're promoting. All right, so we are determining that Simple Strat is a match for HubSpot in this case, so that checks out. We specialize in working just in HubSpot, so we wouldn't have much that talks about Salesforce, Shopify, or WordPress anywhere on our website or anything that we're promoting. But in this case, we've got AirCall here, and we can tell that they would actually be including references for HubSpot, Salesforce, and Shopify. So that is a great indicator that this prompt would also be ready to go. So then we can come back and name our properties, and we can change that to competitor companies. All right, and then once again, simply go ahead and create to save that. All right, moving on to our next one. So we've been talking about company examples so far. We're going to go ahead and switch over and talk about contact ones. So with contact-based data analysis, we don't have quite as many options. So because it is contact-based and you can't really search as well, there's no company website for a contact or anything like that. When it comes to I'm just going to pull this up for example. Comes to using data agent, we really can only use other property data that we have that's existing or using our call transcripts. We are not able to do web research on individual people. And again, there's no website for an individual person as well. So we won't have those options listed here. So we do have to be a little bit more specific with what we are asking or what we're trying to define in these prompts. So in this case, I'm going to say, let's use our call transcripts, and let me actually go back and change this from single line to multiple line. So that way, however much the AI can pull, we can bring that in and we're not limited as much by those character counts. So in this case, I'm going to give us an example of trying to use this for, sales team coaching or analysis of how our sales team is identifying risk or opportunity cues. So in this case, we're going to go ahead and type in what product offerings or solutions were presented in the last call. So depending on if you're sales focused or service focused, you could also look at not just like product offerings, but again solutions as well. So if you are having check-in calls with your clients and making sure that there's a continued level of support as well. So I'm actually going to switch over. I can't run this data in my test portal because we don't have any call transcripts running in that. So I am going to pop over for just a second to my actual portal that has real life customer data in. We are going to blur some things out here just for privacy reasons, but I have run that exact prompt already through and been able to choose one of my customers, so you can see that it is able to really spit out exactly what I actually talked just this week with my client about as far as proposing a new project that we're working on for a ticketing process. And this is a really thorough explanation and evaluation of our last call of exactly um, how we would automate creating tickets and the workflows that would be included with that, what type of fields would be included. It really took a lot of notes here based on our last call. And then it kind of ends off and lets you know that there were no physical or traditional services that were presented. So again, this was more project based on a client that I'm already have an ongoing relationship with. But knowing that we could easily run these types of reports to look at leads that your sales team is actively working, especially for types of target accounts, and being able to know, what has been positioned already, what should we position next, and things like that. So I really love these types of prompts to be able to look back into how you've already talked to your customers or your prospects. All right, so in this case, we can hit create, but there's not going to be, again, any data here based on our test portal. So we can go ahead and just move on to the next one, but we'll go ahead and just name it for sake of naming it and go ahead and hit create. All right, so we have talked mostly about sales and service. We are going to talk a little bit more about marketing in this next example. So again, keeping our focus on contacts since we talked about companies quite a bit already. So we're going to go ahead and create one more property here. And this one is an interesting idea that I thought of. When it comes to marketing, we can typically see what types of contacts are engaging on an individual level. When we look at our marketing emails, there's a little section that says top engaged contacts and things like that. But we don't really get a open rate or a click rate or reply rate by individual. So this would be something that we could build into a smart property to actually determine the likeliness or the level of engagement that a contact might actually already have. So we're going to go ahead and change this to a number. And we're going to calculate percentages for our contacts. So we're going to go ahead and change this to property data. And we are going to look at our marketing emails that have been delivered and calculate a percentage for open. So we can actually determine, based on the number of emails we've sent them that have been delivered, how many times have they actually opened it? Is this someone that's highly engaged or not really? So that maybe we can have really specific campaigns targeting our people that are highest engaged, especially if we're looking at sending out maybe a survey or some sort of new campaign that we've got going. So then we're going to go ahead and pick me as an example because I know that I have sent myself a test email to make sure we could populate some examples of percentages. All right, so now we can see we are at 100%. So being able to see that on a contact level, I think is something that's be really cool for marketers to experiment with. Again, for when it comes to launching new campaigns or kind of maybe wanting to test the waters and A/B test things in different phases, looking at people that are already highly engaged or maybe people that are more low engaged as well, to see if we can get things to turn around or change the dynamics that we have with those contacts. So thought this was a pretty cool example to throw in here. So again, this is based on open rate, but you could change this out to be click rate or reply rate or anything like that. So you can really have fun with these, but just letting you see how you can have an example of existing data that we already know. We have tons of fields that exist for, monitoring number of sales touches or number of attempts that we've had, number of emails that have been delivered, date ranges, and all those sorts of things. And we can bring in those properties as tokens, as you can see here, based on the prompt that I put in. We can go grab other pieces of information and basically mix and match any combination we want to come up with, and tell it to either give us analysis, do some math, whatever it is that we have in our creative juices flowing, so that we can get better insights and be able to use these metrics to determine our next steps. Whether again that's a marketing campaign or determining lead scoring and all sorts of things like that. So we'll go ahead and come back and just name our property here. So we'll do open rate percentage. All right. All right. So for our last example, we are going to jump back into creating one more company property. So we're just going to go ahead and switch on our object, go ahead and switch that to company. Our field type, we are going to do a drop down, and our options here are going to be needs review and okay. Then we're going to go ahead and drop in my prompt here. And we are going to change this data to be property data. And what we are looking for is decision makers, number of decision makers. So the prompt I have here is that we are going to essentially be looking at our companies and determining if we are missing having dissociated decision makers. So we do have a property already created that is a roll up to count the number of contacts that are associated that are labeled as decision maker. So we're basically just trying to find out if there are any that are missing. And if they are, we can go ahead and make sure that we are doing what we can to review those and try to fix that problem. So it could just be data entry of someone forgetting to apply that label to a contact, or maybe we don't know and we need to put in extra effort to figuring out who the decision maker at that company is. So we'll go ahead and again select a couple example records and see if we can't get some results here. Going to continue to use my usual suspects for testing. All right, so now that that's run, it looks like Simple Strat is doing okay. We've got decision makers identified. Oh, but HubSpot and Aircall, if we are working those deals, we must not have properly added our association labels because we do not have any decision makers that have been determined. So we would need to go ahead and review the accuracy of the data for that. So again, ways that we can make inferences about the existing data that we already have, again, whether it's a contact level or a company level, using different property mixes, rolling things up, and determining if something is missing in that area so that we can take the action to fixing that. This wouldn't be something that obviously we could automate to just fill in that information. Someone is going to have to review it and determine who those contacts are. All right, so then last but not least, we are just going to jump back to naming our property here. Decision makers determined. There we go, and simply hit create. So now that we've created those properties, we're going to go ahead and jump into just our regular CRM views and be able to see how we can use these smart properties on the go. So we will have option to go ahead and do these things again one-off. So if we just bring in our records here, let's go ahead and search Simple Strat. And I can go ahead and select from here and fill our smart properties, it'll ask me to obviously go ahead and select from any of those that we've already determined. So I can select multiple at a time here. So we already know we've tested these out just to make sure that they work, but we can go ahead and fill these in. So this will just be on one action that's just right here to do them one off. And then of course we could also do this through a workflow or in bulk if we wanted to select multiple companies within our view here to go ahead and fill in those smart properties. It'll take a second to fill in that data, but then you're good to go. Of course, you can edit your views here and have those columns be displayed if you're working through some data cleanup or any other type of like CRM kind of admin activities. Typically that table view is going to get you exactly what you need. So if we come into our workflows, we can easily go ahead and create workflows to also trigger off the filling in of these smart properties. So we're just going to jump into our builder as usual here. And we will need to obviously determine based on the property what criteria makes the most sense. So you could just want to run it every single time a new company is created, or maybe we want to wait until it's reaching a certain life cycle stage. So you would determine exactly what that criteria is. So in this case, we will go ahead and identify any of our new MQL companies. Save and continue. And then right here under our AI, we are going to have our option here for data agent to fill in that smart property for us. And then we can choose whether we only want to fill it in if it is empty or if we actually want to overwrite any existing values. So this would only really apply if you're going to be like having a re-enrollment sort of trigger. So here we'll just go ahead and say only if it's already empty, we'll go ahead and fill it. So that way, if, you know, in this case, it's life cycle stage, if someone were to recycle and kind of come back through multiple times, we probably don't want to override that information if we already have it. And then we're simply just going to go ahead and select which property we want to fill and go ahead and save. Name our workflow here, company MQL, fill competitors, smart property. There we go. Go ahead and let HubSpot generate a description for us. Save that, and we are ready to go ahead and turn that on. So in these cases, of course, again, it does cost credits. So I would make sure, you don't want to enroll your existing companies unless you are certain that it's not going to go over your limits. So always double check and see how many would actually enroll at the time that you're turning that on. If you're exceeding those HubSpot credits, or if it is use case enough that you do want to go ahead and buy more credits, then go for it. But that would definitely be something to evaluate before just selecting yes and turning it on. So in this case, we'll go ahead and say no and only have it go for new MQL companies that come in. I do want to leave you off with a couple of other additional tips to keep in mind as you start working in creating these new properties. So definitely take advantage of testing in small batches when it comes to getting these new smart properties rolled out to your team. So before you just enroll thousands and thousands, really test, between 10 to 20 to really make sure that the output is reliable and meaningful. Obviously today I used very simple examples of just continuing to pick simple strat in HubSpot since it's my test portal. I don't want to use real customer data in these types of videos, but you do want to make sure that you are selecting a couple test records that include records that have tons of information, but maybe newer records that don't have a lot of information to really see the type of mix of results that you're going to get. And do some of that fact checking yourself. So especially anything that requires the company or web research, go and actually take a look and see, do those results match up to what you would have found on your own? Because the point of using AI is to obviously make it faster, but we also want the accuracy to be there. And there might be things you need to change in your prompt to make it a little bit more specific for you to get those accurate results. So test, and test before deploying and enrolling thousands of records that may or may not get you the results that you're looking for. Again, these do cost credits, so we want to make sure you're monitoring the cost and the actual value that's being added to your CRM. You could probably come up with new smart properties all day long and enter thousands and thousands. You could also rack up adding on thousands and thousands of credits, but it doesn't mean that it's actually going to be valuable at the end of the day, that cost might not be beneficial for you. So, really make sure that these are valuable insights that your team can take action on. So, whether that's empowering your sales team or even management, whether that's helping our marketers market better and smarter and segment a little bit more efficiently, or if it's to really take a look at how your customer service team is servicing and where we can make improvements. Like, make sure that there's truly something at the end of the day that we can come back and show results for these smart properties and why these things are costing us credits. So the whole point is really to automate that enrichment segment better, but also again making sure that this is not just a data dump, but actually a growth machine that you can see the results from. So, if you'd like to see more about specific types of results, I would definitely recommend that you check out our newsletter. So, subscribing to our HubSpot Hacks newsletter, we actually put out tons of information and use case examples and metric based wins for our customers and clients that we are servicing as HubSpot Solutions consultants. So, would love for you guys to check that out and see what you can learn from other more specific use case examples outside of just our videos here. Hope to see you guys soon.